The names of parshios, the names of Torah portions, teach us a lot about the Torah portion. There are Torah portions for Noah, one of the greatest men that the world ever knew. But there's no Torah portion, there's no parsha for Avraham, for Abraham. There's a Torah portion for Yisro, the father-in-law of Moshe, but no parsha for Moshe or Aaron. There's a Torah portion for the antagonist Korach, and there's this week's parsha, the antagonist Balak. This week's parsha is called Parshas Balak. What about Bilam? Why isn't it called Bilam? After all, Bilam was the one who was hired to do the cursing. The story centers around him. Why is there no parsha called Bilam? The Alter of Kelm, one of the fathers of the Musar movement of critical self-analysis in a very deep Torah way, says that the key to answering that lies in the first word of the parsha, Vayar. Vayar Balak. Balak saw. Balak saw, what does that tell us? Bilam saw a lot as well. What's the message of Balak seeing? So I believe that the way to explain this, a take on the words of the Alter of Kelm, in my own way, from what I experienced this week, is as follows. See, this week, my wife and I took our family on a much-needed vacation to Broken Bow, Oklahoma. We went out to the forest, we rented a cabin, we did horseback riding, we did kayaking, and it was great. Each of these vacations forces me to break a little bit out of myself. You see, I have a fear of heights. Heights really scare me. So when I had to stand on that stand, which allows me to get onto the horse, and the horse is quite a bit taller than me, and I'm sitting above the ground, a number of feet off the ground, I started getting a little nervous. But it was okay. It was okay. I didn't have an anxiety attack. I was fine with it. The next day we went kayaking. Now, as much as I don't like heights, I also don't like, and perhaps even more so, don't like deep water. Even though I swim, and I'm fine in swimming, but there's something about deep water that just freaks me out. So each time my wife and the family, who are so comfortable in deep water, want to go on a deep water sport, I try to think of many reasons why not to go. A few years ago, I tried coming up with many excuses as to why my wife and I should not go jet skiing. I was overruled, and within 5 minutes, I found out that I love jet skiing. So kayaking got me a little nervous. We show up to rent the kayaks, and they say they actually don't have enough two-person kayaks. They have enough kayaks that each of us could have our own kayak, which sounded like a terrible idea to me. Everyone else thought it was great, but as far as I was concerned, absolutely terrible. I started getting really nervous. I said, no, we'll go two to a kayak. You know, if the kids want to go each on their own kayak, that's fine, but my wife and I will go with a kayak for two. We get into the water, and the kids immediately zip off, and we don't see them for the next couple of hours. And everything's going fine with our kayak until we hit the first rock, and we get stuck. And we start maneuvering and pushing and so on. And finally, my wife says the words that I was hoping to never hear. She said, I think we're going to have to get out of the boat and push. And I said, no, that's not happening. Torah, why don't you try pushing the boat? I'll sit in the boat, as all brave men would say. And my wife said, sure. So she got out of the boat and she pushed. That worked for one time as we got through a rock, a second time, but the third time she said, we're both going to have to get out. And you know what I learned when I got out of the boat? That it's actually okay. First of all, the water was not particularly deep. It was probably about 6 inches deep, which is why we kept on getting stuck on the rocks. When it was calm, then the water was much deeper. And then things started getting progressively more challenging. We got back into the boat, then we got stuck again, and we had to get out again. And this time Dvorah said, why don't you move the boat a little further and I'll get back in soon? I said, sure. I got back in the boat, and then the boat the kayak started moving down, further down the water or further away from Dvorah. And she said, don't worry, I'll catch up. And I tried stopping the boat, couldn't stop the kayak, and then we got to the waterfall. Now, put it in perspective, the waterfall is about 12 inches. 12 inches of a fall, but to me it seemed like 12 feet. But God was kind to me, and the kayak went sideways. And when it went sideways, it couldn't move over the rocks to get over the waterfall. So I was kind of stuck there, but I said, that's not nice. Dora's trying to walk in the water from rock to rock to get back to the boat, to the kayak. Let me move the kayak back towards her, which I did. At that point in time, the kayak turned straight and went right over the waterfall with me standing on the side holding on for dear life. And we went further. We got stuck again, and then some young people actually came and helped us out. I said, finally, I know what it means to be old. When you have the younger people who, in my mind, I don't look that much older than them, came and helped bailed us out. And my wife told me a few times over the course of this kayaking down this river, she said, there's some sort of message over here. What's the message? What's the message? And as we're trying to figure out the message, I realized the first step is realizing there is a message. The second step is that you got to get into action. You know, had I not gotten out of action, had I insisted on staying in that boat, we'd still be in that water 3 hours away from Plano. So the next step is get into action and try. It might not work. You might mess up, but it's okay. The water is not that deep and you are wearing a life jacket. And in life also, more often than not, we are wearing a proverbial life jacket and maybe the water is not that deep. Get into action, try it out. But the first step is see what's going on, realize there's a message. Look at the two antagonists of this week's parsha. You've got Balak and you've got Bilam. Bilam is the sorcerer. He's the one who's got the power to curse. And Balak sends a message to him saying, I need you to curse the Jews. Bilam says, well, I have to wait and see what God says. Let's see what Hashem says. So that night, Hashem comes to him in a dream, and Hashem says, don't go. Don't go. Bilam has to come the next morning and tell them, I'm sorry, I was not given the green light. But what does he say? He says, send a message to Balak that even if he gives me a house full of gold and silver, I cannot violate the words of my God. Which the commentaries understand him saying, if you only give me a house full of gold and silver, then I can't violate it. But you make it worth my while, I'll be able to circumvent God. And sure enough, what happens? Hashem comes back to him, sends a messenger to him and says, okay, you can go. But what's Hashem really saying? He's not really saying go. He's saying, you'll push me, fine, I'll agree, but that's not what's best for you. Many years ago, in my single days, I was dating a girl who I thought was Miss Right, and I thought I was marrying her and everything was great. And then she let me know that she did not have the same feelings about me, and I was devastated. All those love songs, all those radio songs, they were me. And I called my Rosh Yeshiva, I called my rabbi, and I said, I need to speak to the rabbi, I need some guidance. He said, okay, we'll meet. So I met with him, and I told him what's going on. And he told me what to do, basically, try to move on in life. He said, David, pray to Hashem, but don't pray too much. In other words, clearly Hashem's saying this is not the right match for you. Which in retrospect, I see, of course, the absolute wisdom of that. Hashem's saying it's not the best, but if you push, Hashem might say, okay, you're pushing, I'm not going to stop you. Bilam thinks he's so smart, he's able to circumvent. But what happens? He goes on the road, riding on his donkey, and then the angel, the Malach of Hashem, is there in front of the donkey, and forcing the donkey to get to one side, to the other side, and the donkey's stuck. And Bilam doesn't see any of this. And he's whacking the donkey and hitting the donkey. Finally, the donkey turns to him and says, what are you hitting me for? And Bilam then begins to have a conversation. I'm hitting you because you're forcing my foot into the wall and I'd kill you and so on. And the donkey responds, if I was riding a donkey and the donkey started talking to me, I would have a heart attack. I'd be so shocked I'd fall off the donkey, I'd run away, I'd be horrified. Or maybe in modern day terms, I'd pull out my iPhone and start videoing the conversation. Take a selfie with the donkey. But I'd be shocked, I would have some sort of reaction. Bilam doesn't react. You know, you can be great. You can have the power, the gift of gab. You can have the power to talk, to curse, and so on, to change worlds with your mouth. But you could just miss it and be a narcissistic person and completely miss the message. Bilam was not Vayar. Bilam did not see. The most miraculous things happening in front of him, all these messages, and what's he doing? He's trying to just rework it in a way that's for his benefit. Balak doesn't do that. What happened to with Balak? Balak sees. Something's going on over here. The Jews were taken out of Mitzrayim, were taken out of Egypt with incredible miracles. They've gone through the desert. They are tearing up the territory. They are destroying the nations in their way. Something's going on. Vayar Balak, he sees something's going on. There's a God involved over here. He doesn't put it back all the way to Hashem. He doesn't convert to Judaism and say, Hashem's amazing, but at least he sees something going on. Bilam is that great person, but sometimes you miss it. As a rabbi, sometimes you have a challenge that the role of a rabbi, or the role of at least my rabbinate, is, as I say, to comfort the afflicted, but also to afflict the comforted, to push people forward, push them to take a mitzvah. And sometimes it's to encourage them and maybe push them to make a donation, to support an organization, to support teaching Torah. And there's always a danger that sometimes you'll push somebody and they'll say, okay, Rabbi, I'll take on that mitzvah, or I'll write out that check. And your first thought is, yes, I got it. I did it. But the next thought has to be, but do they feel good about it? Or do they feel pushed into a corner? And you may have won, but you've lost. A very successful businessman once taught us, he said, always leave money on the table when you're closing a business deal. Always leave money. In other words, don't negotiate the last dollar out of someone's pocket, because you'll get the last dollar, but you won't get any more business. Or you'll get a negative reputation, or people won't want to talk to you anymore, or they'll feel wrong about it. They'll feel like they were abused by you. It's the same thing in interacting with people. Bilam teaches us as the antagonist how to relate to Hashem. Hashem's sending you a message. The messages and messages, but there's no vayar. There's no seeing. There's no understanding. There's no getting the message whatsoever. We live in what we call unprecedented times. Some people call crazy times, unbelievable times. They're actually perfect, and they're perfect for us. We're in the kayak going down the water, and it's time for us to say, what's the message? And your message might be different than my message. And the message for your family might be different than the message for my family. And we might guess the message and we might get it wrong, but that's okay. But we're getting out of the boat. We're doing something. We're making an effort. That's the key. Vayar Balak. Bilam, the parsha is not named for Bilam because Bilam totally misses the message. There's no lesson from Bilam. Balak, oh boy, is there a message from Balak. Vayar, he saw. In our lives, that's what we have to do sometimes. We have to get a little bit of a perspective and understand, see things. The Talmud says something something fascinating. The Gemara says that we have a Yetzer Hara, we have a negative part of ourselves that tries to incite us and to get us to do what's wrong and negative and so on. And that negative side, the Yetzer Hara, is compared to a fly. Why a fly? So I was discussing this at the Shabbat table with the family. And I said possibly one of the reasons is how long is the lifespan of a fly? The lifespan of a fly, I checked it up, I Googled it, is 28 days. One of my children has a fly in their room these days. And every morning the child comes down and says, I couldn't sleep late. The fly woke me up at 7 a.m. and is buzzing. And can you find an exterminator to kill that fly? My reaction is, it's got 28 days. After 28 days, it's going to be something of the past. The fly is temporary. You know what the Yetzer Hara does? It puts you in a situation, say this thing, look at this item, look at this inappropriate picture. Say something nasty, do something, forget about your obligations, whatever it is. And it looks so real and so important at the time. And if we could just realize it's fleeting. In the perspective of life, am I going to look back and say, I'm glad I did that or not? Of course I'm going to say, what did I do that for? I really needed to look at that. I really needed to say that. I really needed to hurt that person. I really needed to sleep in that day instead of doing what I should have done. The Yetzer Hara takes one picture and makes it look like it's everything. The fly is the most annoying thing in the world, but keep perspective, it's going to pass. Vayar, see it. And I think that's the message for us in our lives, the message of right now, there's an opportunity. Vayar, see the opportunity. But every moment in life, when you have an annoying headache, or when your child wakes you up at 3 a.m, or when you're struggling to pay a bill, or when you have an opportunity to study and you feel challenged, whatever it might be, there's a Vayar, there's an opportunity there. Take the opportunity. Try to see What is it that Hashem is telling me right now? What is my growth opportunity right now? If I do that, then I'll be living with the Parsha. I'll truly be living with the times. I won't be a Bilam, but I'll be a Balak on the way to becoming a Moshe. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Stay safe. As we know, the numbers are going up in Texas, the infection rate, the hospitalization rates. We have to be careful. Those of us who are coming to shul are wearing masks and practicing social distancing, and we need to practice that outside of shul as well. Be safe, but stay connected. Understand the message. Come, let's discuss it together. Sit on my front lawn this Shabbos, and let's talk. Let's schmooze. Let's study Torah together, and let's vayar. Let's see the messages for our lives. Have a wonderful Shabbos, Chevra. I love you. I look forward to seeing you soon.